Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and don't mind me while I get comfortable in my seat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm trying to situate myself in the square on my computer so that my head isn't cut off, while also being able to see my notes for the show. And my eyesight, to be specific, is not as good as it was in the past. And I left my glasses downstairs. So here's a little bit of insight into why I'm scooting around in my chair a little bit. But enough about my current comfortability situation, and let's get into today's episode, because today's episode I really am excited to get into, because I feel like if there's one thing that I have seen recurring with myself, that I've felt within myself, and I've seen happen with so many women, it is, and I've seen really now spoken publicly by the women, especially the ones that I'm working with in my programs, is the awareness that chaos, that feeling of chaos, that feeling of, of crisis mode, and then getting out of crisis mode, and then feeling like I'm back in crisis mode. This episode is going to be why chaos feels safer for us sometimes than the experience of healing. And by the end of the episode, we're going to get to the place where we can start to open our minds to how to finally let it be good. Because if you think about it, I truly believe that from an existential place, having things be good is inherently really scary. And so today is what this episode is going to be about. Today, this topic is what this episode is going to be about. What happens when you're no longer in crisis? Right? What happens? And even if you think about social media, a lot of the things that are out there, so much of it is talking about the crisis moment. So much is talking about the pain problem, right? We're talking about, healing the bottom. But what if we start visiting a part of the conversation where we talk about how do we learn how to be with good? Right? Because what happens when there's nothing left to fix? When there's no big emergency? There's no big emergency or problem to solve. There's no fresh start to obsess over, right? We always talk about how to get out of the mindset of not needing to start over on Monday. But what is the skill set that we need to stay in the place of being okay with getting to the place and being in the place of not starting over Monday? Because that's a different level. That is a different level. And for so many of us, those who have spent years in the loop of emotional eating, weight obsession, perfectionism, right? Proving our worth. If we're being truthful, it's not a relief that rushes in when things calm down. That is not the feeling that comes, right? The feeling that comes initially is like I've achieved something, right? But it's not a relief. And this is what I felt for so long, and this is what my clients feel, why a lot of the women I work with end up in this. This is what the cycle, this is the engine of the cycle. Okay, it's this, right? This is the power unit of the cycle. The fact that it's not a relief when things finally calm down what really comes up, what really starts to power on is panic, is restlessness, right? It's a deep cellular discomfort. Like, who even am I if I'm not working towards some future version of me? It's like a deep identity crisis. And so I want to unpack this today because it's one of the biggest reasons that you might self-sabotage, why you keep circling back into old patterns even after you've done the work, right? Even after you understand so much, right? Your mind is awakened, but your behaviors haven't changed. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I'll just tell you a little story about a client of mine that I had because, and honestly, this is just one example because there have been a few, and let's call her, Julia. Um, and she came to me after years of being on the wagon, off the wagon. You know the story. You'll probably relate to her, right? She did the green smoothies. She did the workout. She did the 30-day workout challenge. She did the reverse dieting, the eating and then cutting, right? She did all the things. Okay, she did a lot of things, right? She would do it for 30 days. And then the newness energy of it would wear off, even if it might have even worn off after 14 days, right? But like at some point, the newness energy wore off, the ability to stay motivated wore off, the momentum wore off. And before she knew it, she's, pick your poison, binging on, stale cookies in the dark the next, right? Like whatever it is for you. But here's what stood out for me with this woman. And I touched on it before. She knew everything, right? She could quote nervous system theory. She could tell me her attachment style, right? Like, yeah, I'm an anxious attacher, and so I binge. She could explain exactly where her binge episodes were rooted emotionally, right? She told me all about the reasons why she started binging. She even did forgiveness work around that, but she still couldn't stop. Right? She still couldn't stop the chaotic cycle. And then one day, we were chatting one day and she looked at me and she was like, she had this look of exhaustion and she was like, here's what I think I realized. Okay, and this is really deep. Here's what I think I realized. I feel more like myself when I'm struggling than when I'm doing well. Okay, I feel more like myself when I'm struggling than when I'm doing well. And that hit me, right? Because I understood that. I lived that too, right? That identity, right? The hustle, the chase, right? The I'll be better once I fix this, right? There's something to, to future cast on where there's going to be gold at the other side of that rainbow, right? It gave me something to be. And so if you've lived in that cycle for so many years, it makes so much sense, right? You can find strange comfort in chaos. And what happens then is that you turn rock bottom into a launch pad again and again. And not because you're failing, but because you don't know who you are without something to fix. And there's this addiction to survival mode, right? There's this addiction to survival mode so that we can resource the power to feel like we're moving forward in some capacity. But really it's like Truman Show, right? It's like the Truman Show movie with Jim Carrey. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's really good. Because the truth of the matter is most emotional overeaters, compulsive eaters, women that struggle with the obsessive dieting, compulsive, micromanaging behavior with food. They're not lazy people, right? Like they're not lacking discipline. In fact, it's the opposite. They're high achieving, they're high functioning, and even more so, they're hyper aware women usually. Right? They're really hyper aware because once women start coming to me for support, they have their awareness brain has been opened, usually, right? In some capacity or another. I'm not usually their first rodeo with with self-awareness work, mindfulness stuff. Usually once people are attracted to my work, and they're attracted and they're ready to, jump into my work, they've done some of this, or they've been listening to me for, a couple months to a year or something, right? But so we're definitely not lazy, right? But you have been taught to chase the next goal, to constantly be in motion, to chase the next more evolved, better, right? A better, a fixed version of yourself. And effort and fixing, right? And so fixing means that when you fix something, it means something was broken, something was wrong, and then you fix it, and then it's right, it's good, it's going to receive accolades, right? It's going to receive flowers, right? As the kids say these days. But then what happens when things finally stabilize? And this is what I see so much. When things finally do stabilize, you fix it. It's good. It's working. Right? It feels calm. You're listening to your hunger cues. You stopped eating when you were full, right? Like you noticed that you were about to eat something, in a compulsive way, and you stopped yourself and you didn't do it. And maybe the first time that felt great, like you achieved the goal, but then what happens when it becomes like something you do every day, right? Like then it doesn't have the same kind of prize energy anymore. It's just something that is normal. You might notice this creeping urge to stir something up, right? And not because you're broken, right? It's like not because something is really wrong, but because your nervous system is used to operating in extremes, right? Your nervous system is used to operating in extremes. It's addicted to the rhythm of effort and reward, of chaos and control. What it's not addicted to is food. Okay? What it is addicted to is that cycle of effort and reward, of chaos and control. And so how do we turn on, right? How do we power that addiction? We have to hit a rock bottom so that we could launch pad ourselves into this cycle. And that cycle becomes so emotionally grounding, even if it's destructive, right? Because if we're being honest, it feels bad more than it feels good. Okay, so this is the launch pad, the kind of self-sabotage, rock bottom launch pad part of this, right? What makes it so difficult. But let's talk about another trap that I see a lot too. And I say this with so much compassion and and empathy, because I've fallen into it too. In fact, I think I spent easily a decade in this. I remember what it felt like to be stuck in the cycle of emotional eating. I tried every diet out there, counting, tracking, restricting, but nothing ever worked. Food controlled my life, my thoughts, and I constantly felt guilty after eating. But once I learned how to heal the emotional triggers behind my eating and trust my body, everything changed. I stopped obsessing over food, the weight started coming off naturally, and I found real freedom in how I ate and lived. So, I created the Sober Eating year-long mentorship to help other women experience the same transformation. So you can stop battling with food, you can lose weight without deprivation, and you can feel confident in your body again. In this mentorship, you'll have access to my proven nervous system rewiring method. You'll have access to live coaching with me, weekly accountability, and a community of women who truly understand your journey. You'll also have free access to my signature programs, the Emotional Eating Solution and Decoding Permanent Weight Loss, valued at $2,000. Click the link in the show notes to explore the mentorship today. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be right there with you every step of the way. Self-awareness is not healing. Understanding is not healing. Right? It's the beginning, but it's not the end. Okay, it's so easy to stay in the world of insight, right? Reading the books, even listening to my podcast, listening to other people's podcasts, just consuming, collecting more insights, having more aha self-awareness moments, knowing your triggers inside out, knowing your internal family systems, knowing knowing the emotional root of something, right? Knowing is important, and it's an opening, but it's not healing, right? You have to open the wound to heal the wound, but opening the wound isn't healing the wound, right? What heals the wound is action and repatterning, action repatterning. That's what heals the wound. And insight without action becomes another way that we stay stuck, right? Well, we can validate our pain, super valuable, super important for, for that first part of healing, right? Crack yourself wide open, cry a lot, validate your pain, make it real, especially if you're somebody who really has, and I was like that, who went through a lot of emotional pain that I wasn't able to name. And, and it took me a long time to unravel balls of emotion that were so tightly wound, that were underneath a lot of my behaviors. And it was super important for me to, really deconstruct those balls and really kind of unravel that and validate my own pain and understand my past. But that wasn't enough, right? It didn't actually change the pattern. Because real healing, to change the pattern, you need that self-compassion. You need that feeling your feelings. And it could take a really long time to really, especially if you've been not feeling your feelings for so long, it could be, it could take a while. I have a phase in my mentorship called the release phase, where this is, the big moment and the phase where we work on this. And some people stay in this phase for a couple months before they move into the next phase, just because there's such a hard shell that until the shell softens, you have to give that You have to allow that to happen, and you can't rush the hard shell to soften, because trying to rush the hard shell to soften is literally just the same trauma as it's been as the shell, as it's been feeling the whole time. Right? It's really important that one of the things you understand with healing is that time, reorganizing your relationship with the time it takes to heal is really key. Because real healing is the marriage of self-compassion, true self-compassion, allowing yourself to really get there, and self-responsibility. And so what does that look like? It looks like saying, yes, this happened. Yes, this shaped me. Yes, it was painful. But, and I get to choose differently now. Right? I am the one in the driver's seat. I can rewire these automatic behaviors that I've been doing when the shell was hardened and I didn't know better. But now I've softened the shell. I opened the shell. I could see inside the shell. So now I'm going to take the actions to heal what's inside through different actions. And that's the self-responsibility part. Okay. And that's something that's really important that you have to begin to build a skill for in order to be able to get to the place where we don't need to be in that cycle of rock bottom and fixing. Okay. So when you get to the place where you are feeling more healed, right? It's less chaotic, it's less extreme. The behaviors feel like they're under control. You're able to feel more in agency of your choices with food, your choices with eating. You've relaxed some of the judgments or the expectations that you have on yourself around your body, potentially, right? Even if you are somebody who's looking to lose weight, potentially, maybe you realize that, and you're starting to trust that healing some of these nervous system patterns is the key and is the path towards your body finally releasing weight. What happens when you finally get to a place where it starts to feel stable? It starts to feel like this is you now. If you've lived in a survival mode for years, I want to normalize this, that stability can feel terrifying. Right? Ease can feel like boredom, which I have retrained my mindset to realize that boredom is not negative, but society has trained us to think that being bored is a negative. It's not. But this is what could happen, right? We could start to veer towards negativity, and we could start to feel like ease and peace are more threatening than anything else. Right? Like I had a client, in the mentorship, tell me just a couple weeks ago, I'm not binging anymore. I'm eating normally. Like I'm like, I'm not having these like extreme behaviors, this extreme like relationship that I'm having with, that I have with food in the past, right? Like just kind of explaining that things are starting to feel more neutral. And then she proceeded to be like, but I just feel off, right? Like I'm waiting for something bad to happen, right? Like she felt more anxious and off in this space of less extreme behavior, less extreme, emotional state with her brain with food and eating, right? She was all of a sudden thinking like her mind went to like hypervigilance. And it's important to realize that as your nervous system is learning how to trust calm again, this might happen. And these are where this is the skill. This is the canvas almost that you are going to build the skill of the emotional capacity that you need to heal for good. It's in these moments of neutrality when the old nervous system, calibration system, and that power unit just tries to start to come in different ways, which is one of the ways is this, where you just start to feel antsy. Being able to ride out these moments is how your nervous system and body is going to recalibrate. And it's how you learn how to stop the cycle of the rock bottom launch pad to healing chaos that we're talking about today. Okay, because this moment is pivotal, right? It's the moment that so many women feel and turn back, right? They say that maybe I'm not ready. They look for another program, another fix, another goal, right? But like I said before, this is the part where the real work begins, right? When it starts feeling normal and there's not a lot of noise happening and there's not a lot of immediate gratification yet, this is the part where most women then start to like frantically look for the next thing to fix, like I said. But again, this is the pivotal canvas that is the root of the real healing. This is where you learn to expand from real wholeness, real capacity instead of hustle. Right? This is where you stop with the performance of healing and you start really living and embodying it. And when you realize that letting things be neutral and peaceful and easy or easier, right? Or just calmer or not dramatic, it's not lazy. It's not lazy. And this is how, when you learn to do this, this is how you can let it be good. This is how you can let it be good. So if you're in this space now, right, where you feel like things are, maybe feeling too calm, where you're tempted to shake things up, maybe, you're weirdly thinking about binging again, even though you haven't for a little while, right? Restart the old cycle, right? Maybe do it on your own or something, or, kind of whatever that looks like for you. Okay. Whatever putting yourself back into the old operating system looks like for you, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what would it feel like to let this be good, to let this stay good? Right? What if it could just be buoyant and stay abundant and stay good, right? What if this next phase of your healing, what if it doesn't always have to be becoming a new version of you, but what if it's learning how to stay with the you that you became? Because that's part of the healing too. Healing is not just about changing, it's about staying. And like I said, changing into a new person and having new behaviors and having your nervous system recognize and have the recognition of what a different way of being with food is very different than staying that way. Very different than staying that way. And so really take the time to value that, learning how to trust her, right? Trust the you, the new version of you, to lead the new version of you. Right? That's really important. That's really, really valuable. And oftentimes we don't value that part of it because there's still a little bit of the old operating launch, rock bottom launch pad that's still there in the back of our mind saying, oh, we're not worthy. Or we're not fully, we didn't fully win if we're still, getting supported around staying. And eventually you'll get to the place where, you don't have to continue to test yourself. You don't have to continue to test yourself, and you'll just be able to arrive, and you'll just be able to let it be good. But give yourself the time to really laminate in that and really get your nervous system feeling safe in that. Because that is true healing. That is true healing. Okay, so thank you so much for showing up, listening to this week's episode. I love doing these episodes for you. We're almost at our 100th episode, and I can't believe it. I think we have a couple more episodes until our 100th episode. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to us on YouTube, give us a like. If you are not yet following the podcast on Spotify and Apple, please do. Really helps us in the algorithm, and we really love seeing how many more listeners we have each week. It's really fun. So thank you so much. And I will see you again next week. And until next week, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.